Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Southern Mountain, and welcome back. Now today I want to talk about something that's just been popping up in the news again and again and again over the last few days. And that's the issue of kind of anonymity online. And this is something that Theresa May brought up at the G7 summit, where she was saying that she wanted tech giants to clamp down on vile attacks against women, not quantified but stated, which is where this kind of thing starts. And then over the weekend, we also had Security Minister Ben Wallace say that digital IDs should be brought into end online anonymity to the allows bullying and grooming and other such negative things to transpire. And then you had Jess Phillips coming in and again also saying that she wants to force people like Facebook and Twitter to ensure that they get the real identities of the individuals that are using their services. But then her comments are the most weird and kind of hypocritical and back and forward strange. So we'll get onto those in a minute. But when it comes to the what's being called for here in regards to digital IDs and other things like that. Firstly, the police already have access to go into the back door of your, say, Facebook or whatever else if they have a kind of good reason to do so, or if they have a warrant or whatever else. Then they're allowed to use law enforcement access to go and peruse and go and find the information that they need. And as we saw from when I showed you the Facebook data cache that I downloaded from my own Facebook profile, the stuff that's in there that's stored includes locational data, it includes the IP addresses that I've logged in from, and like IP addresses are, to one extent or another, a pretty good way of tracking down which machine is being used to send that information from. Now, yes, you can get kind of VPNs and you can use various forms of mirroring and all kinds of other bits and pieces to make that a less obvious thing and something that you can hide more readily. But again, the majority of people who are, say, spewing hate speech online or launching tirades at people, trolling to the extent that these people are getting so upset about it, it none of those people are really going to be paying that much attention to it because they're your average keyboard warrior. Yeah, they're the people that, because they are behind a keyboard, because they are playing a game and they're in a different situation, they're immersed in it, or there's so much kind of mental space as far as their perception is concerned from them to their subject. It's a case of they're not aware of it, they're not paying attention to it. It's the number of people that will speak big online, but then when they actually get pushed to do something in person, then they fall to pieces. We see this on commentators and things like that online as well. Other YouTubers that have been caught out for talking big right up until then they get caught out. We've seen this with streaming and people and certain streamers on Twitch and things like that have talked big to their audience and then landed in trouble because they didn't actually have the ability to back up what they said. One of the things that stands out to me more recently was the Anonymity versus PewDiePie and what was the copyright group that backed her up? I can't remember, but they where her claims were her speaking, just trying to be a big girl, trying to kind of be strong against the individuals within her chat. And yeah, guess what? When it actually came to examination, when it came to her being put on the spot and actually having to live up to the claims that she had made, yeah, she didn't do a good job because she didn't actually have the power she suggested she had. Same with an awful lot of other things that are being talked about here. There's an awful lot of stuff that's thrown out there, and the tools are already available for both law enforcement, but also for just average users of social media to get past this stuff. There are block buttons on every single platform. There's filtering on a good number of platforms. It's a case of, if you want to cut someone out, you can block them, you can limit their access to your profile or to interacting with you. But that's social media. Some of the other stuff that's been talked about here is stuff like email, and it's like, well, email is just an electronic message. If you want to filter it out, you can add it to spam. If you want to, just delete it, seeing what it is, then fine, just delete it. You don't have to think about it. If, as I've said before in other videos, when it comes to personal responsibility for your own emotions, how people and the universe affect you, that's all internal, that's all on you. You can't start passing the buck on other people, and they do have a right to, granted, in this country, in the UK, not as extensively as in certain other countries, most prominently the US, because they love talking about it so much, but we don't have as full a freedom of speech, but we still have a lot of freedom of speech. And so, yeah, it's a case of going, kind of forcing people to disclose their identities is, surely, if they want to talk as a persona, if they want to talk in a different way, if they want to sign up as part of a group but only use one name, then that's a different situation. Also, a lot of these websites, again, Facebook and Twitter, they ask you for your personal information already. They ask you for your name and your email addresses and any other information. But at the same time, you could put any information in there, and there's no way for them to be 100% sure if that's accurate or not. They don't have access to full census data. They don't have access to all of the information about everybody. And they shouldn't, because they're private companies. They are corporations off doing their own thing. They aren't the government. And even the government shouldn't really necessarily have all of our information about us. They should have a good amount of it, granted, because they are there to supposedly look out for us and work in our best interests. Not that a lot of governments have been doing that all that recently. But it's a case of, yeah, they need more information. But now let's get on to some of the comments from Jess Phillips, because the others have kind of just been like, oh, well, here's this bad thing and we think it's happening online, and so this is our attempt at a solution. And it's like, well, in terms of the security minister's suggestion that digital IDs would prevent online bullying and grooming, firstly, no, they wouldn't, because there are already online IDs of one sort or another that are used by law enforcement to find people online and to track them down, and yet the problem still persists. That you can try and minimize that in as many ways as you want online, but it's still always going to find a way, because the person behind the keyboard is still going to have the intention to do the harm. They are still going to have the intention to send the message, do the thing, groom the person that they find interesting, whatever. That's what they're going to do. In which case, what it comes down to is, you need to work on the people, not the tech. But the people are harder, they're more complicated, they're more spread out. And so you need to look at doing that. So maybe not cutting funding for police and not kind of lowering the number of police officers available to deal with these things would probably be a good idea. In regards to Theresa May's vile attacks against women, there have been numerous studies that have shown that men actually take the brunt, the largest amount of attacks online and stuff like that, and all of the platforms already have stuff stuck in there as block buttons or filters, or being able to change who can see your profile or whatever. They're already all sat there, they're already all part of the system. And the vile attacks against women, I would love to see her kind of qualify and quantify those, right there, because if you're wanting tech giants, these large corporations with a lot going on, to change, then they're not going to do it on a whim. You're either going to have to force them with laws, which again, what's this law going to specifically suggest that they need to do? Will it even be realistic for them to do? what happens if they can't manage it, but then also you're going to have to present them with something that demonstrates that there's a problem that they can actually work with, because a nebulous made up problem isn't a technical issue that they can fix on their system. It's not something that they can manage around the development of their platform, and so it's not going to go anywhere. But as said, let's get on to these comments from Jess Phillips, because there are two things that she kicked off with saying when she made these comments last week. And the first one was that she felt that places like Facebook and Twitter need to force people to disclose their real identities. Well, firstly, as we've already said, that's incredibly hard. But then she also said that there were good reasons for whistleblowers to still appear anonymous to the public. And it's like, right, but if they're making posts online, for instance, some of the more people who have been posting anonymously to things like #MeToo, or some of the people who have been posting anonymously in regards to the things that have been going on in certain political institutions, certain other institutions that have been brought into question more recently, or companies that are doing things that just aren't legal, all of those kind of things. If they're posting them on social media, considering that is the place to post these things, how are they going to stay completely anonymous if a company holds their real identity and their full information? There's something of an issue with that, because if someone holds their information, then an anonymous whistleblower is not anonymous to everybody. And even then, that means that all it would take would be the wrong person to get hold of the information, the right person to hack the information and disseminate it, whatever else. We've seen hack after hack after hack of large databases filled with all kinds of people's information, thousands of people's information in regards to financial information, private information in regards to addresses and phone numbers and whatever else, email addresses, passwords, all being hacked and then thrown out into the world for whoever to get hold of. And so all it would take would be one person who doesn't like that whistleblower getting hold of that information, arguably quite easily, depending on what resources that person has available to them, and then telling the right people or the wrong people, depending on your perspective. But then let's move on to her direct comment, which really kind of irks me, and that is, she says that I don't feel I am physically in any danger, and I don't think my children are in any danger. However, where it does worry me, and I think that we have to do something about, is when it affects our democracy. I personally have come to the viewpoint that I don't think people should be allowed to be completely anonymous online anymore. Okay, that's a lot of interesting conflation of topics, so let's unpack that a little bit. Firstly, she says that these messages that she receives, mostly due to being not the nicest of people, to be fair. This is the woman that went on a security committee in the UK, laughed at the male suicide rate. And it's a case of she's not the nicest of person, so she deserves a fair amount of flack for some of the comments and some of the things that she's said and done. As said, laughing at a very serious problem for half of the population of this country. And yet then she decides to go, well, I can take all of this and I can say that I'm not at risk and I'm not in harm's way. And there have been harassment orders posted against people who have been who've stepped over the line and gone way too far, which she described as constantly emailing me bile and abuse. So again, that's been reported to the police. The police have followed it up. As per the law, those harassment orders have been sent to 2 people. And so then, though, you look at all the rest of this, and she says, well, she doesn't feel she's in danger in any way, and she obviously has no issue of going to the police. In theory, that means that she's got more than enough faculties to no longer tolerate this stuff. If she wants to, she could literally just block everything. She could quite happily block and filter stuff, although I would suggest that would be her not doing her job very well, considering as a leader, you need to have resilience. You need to have a capacity to take what people throw at you and move on. And whether she likes it or not, she's an MP, she's a leader. But then when she goes on to talk about our democracy, when again she's already said that she feels that whistleblowers should still be protected. Well, okay, good luck with that if you want companies and everybody else kind of monitoring all of the true and factual information to their best ability, which, by the way, they already do. But if you're asking them to be more stringent and to only once you've had full verification of a person being a real person and whatever else, allow them access to a platform, then again that leaves that information there potentially open to misuse. But also when it comes to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and open discourse, saying that you need to track everybody who wants to comment on you in case you can, you need to go and pinpoint them and whatever else. Well, that's not democracy. That's targeting people. That's authoritarianism. People have. If a voice shouts out at you from a crowd when you're giving a speech or whatever else because they disagree with you, because they dislike what you're saying, whatever, that's their right to do so. That's they're as long as they're not breaching the law and doing terrible things, they're quite capable of just shouting out in disagreement, possibly even shouting out as an insult. But it's still a case of going, well, that's their right. Part of democracy is that you, especially in a representative democracy like ours, where we have leaders that are maybe not necessarily even who the majority have chosen. It's a case of, you have the crowd, and everyone within that crowd has a right to call out on the leader, the person in front of them, the person who has been selected or has found themselves in the job. They have a capacity to do that from the safety of the crowd, from the safety of the masses that are being represented by that one individual. There's no reason why they shouldn't. If you wanted more information from them or whatever else, then you could ask them to identify themselves, but then they also have the right to not volunteer themselves after the fact. So the democracy point that she's trying to make is just a twisted, weird one that doesn't make any sense. And then she says that it's her personal viewpoint that she doesn't think people should be completely anonymous online anymore. Well, yeah, that's your personal viewpoint. But the point that you've tried to back up by saying, "Oh, it's my personal viewpoint," the thing that you've said before that was that it affects our democracy, but it doesn't. In fact, the being a part of the silent majority until such time as you become the vocal majority or vocal minority is very much part of how democracy works, and it's something that sometimes causes problems. But at the same time, it's the way that the system that we currently have functions. Do I personally think that the system needs an update? Yeah, but not in the way of limiting people. We need more intelligent and organised thought in our governing, rather than someone's personal viewpoints on something that they are obviously biased against, just due to their personal situation. But then also we've got the Culture Secretary, Matt Hancock, who also pointed out that he has concerns about social media, and he said that he doesn't let his children use it. Well, that's fine. I don't think children should be allowed to use it, at the very least, until they're like 13. Most sites actually try to at least in some way limit the impact of it on young people. Maybe they don't do a great job, but also a lot of the time, like the number of people who I know, who I've seen, who have had kids, and then their kid has got a Facebook as soon as they've been born. Yeah, and their parent might curate the Facebook. It's not directly impacting the kid, as it were, but it's still something that's there that then that kid may very well take over, or may very well do what they want with at a later date. And it's a case of going, just don't put them on social media until they're old enough to understand it, until they're old enough to really grasp what's going on with it, when it becomes an issue where they need to communicate in that way. They don't need to be on there otherwise. It doesn't make any sense for them to be on there otherwise. I'm fairly certain in a good number of the places, I'm pretty certain that Facebook even has something in its long list of terms and conditions about ages of people being on the platform. I seem to remember reading something about that a while ago. But again, it's in terms of online anonymity, are there people who are vitriolic and miserable human beings when it comes to them being behind a keyboard and able to say and do whatever they want? Yes. Guess what? There are also arseholes in every workplace in the world. And none of they won't necessarily breach any laws. They are just unpleasant people. That's something that you have to grow a thicker skin to when you first go into work. If you're online, that's something you need to either grow a thicker skin to or use the tools available to you that have been made available to you for a very long time to filter out, block, and do whatever it is that you need to do to make it a safe and comfortable environment for you. You could quite happily go and remove yourself entirely from it, if you so wished. Jess Phillips here with her complaints. Don't list private emails, don't list private Facebook or anything like that. I'm fairly certain that she's probably got some kind of support team for her working within her constituency, in which case, fine. Have one of those people curate the email, have one of those people curate the social media, and have them filter it for you. Have that be part of their role specifically to just filter, delete all the crap and only give you the stuff that's important and worthwhile. Things that have points to it and that aren't just insults. Things that are criticism that aren't just vitriol. That's not a difficult thing to do for someone in your position, let alone just doing it yourself in regards to setting filters and blocking individuals and whatever else. I mean, it might take a while depending on how many people you've engaged in one way or another that during that period, but it's still a case of going, the tools are already there in terms of the IDs. They're already there in terms of the IP addresses and the other signifying elements that are distributed whenever we go online and whenever we do anything. Tracking cookies and other things like that that can verify where someone is, what they're doing, which machine was used, whatever else. All of those things to one extent or another are all there in one way, shape or form. Everything that they're asking for. It reminds me of the what was it, the US Senate? Or was it Congress? I can't remember which one interviewed Mark Zuckerberg. And the number of softball kind of nonsensical questions that just demonstrated that those people had never even looked at Facebook. It's a case of, you've got people here who are either older, disconnected, unaware, uncaring, in the case of Miss Phillips, who are all bashing social media when the problem isn't social media, the problem is people. Both the people receiving the stuff, not necessarily using the tools to the fullest that they are provided with, and just the people behind the keyboard being arseholes. Are there ways to remedy these problems? Yes. Are they entirely tech-based? Hell no. In which case, my roundup of this, you've got a lot of people who are running scared of social media because social media is still growing very quickly and doing an awful lot very fast. It's not as secure as it could be. It's been responsible and involved in a whole lot of shady shit recently. And so, it's understandable that these people are suddenly scared, that they're worried about it. But they're focusing on the wrong aspect, because it's not the media part of the whole thing that's causing the issues. It's the social part. And where does the social part come from? It comes from the people. So anonymity online, it protects people. It protects their careers, both in terms of whistleblowing, in terms of people who are there discussing controversial topics and who have lifestyles that they need to maintain, in terms of people using it for the sake of company gimmicks, for the sake of all kinds of other things. You prevent people from opening up accounts with their not 100% factual, not 100% real information, then we lose huge numbers of commentators, huge numbers of people whose voices are, at the very least, worthwhile as part of the discussion, if not worthwhile as part of the solution, to any issue. And so as a result, do I feel that people should be forced to not be anonymous? No, I feel they should be left alone. Do I feel that there are more things that these individuals who are scared of this stuff can do? Yeah, absolutely. Do I feel that those tools already exist? Do I feel that the main issue has to do with the people, though, and that is a different situation that needs to be worked on for a lot longer? Yes. And the thing that stands out about that more than anything else is that social media is still very new. Lots of people who are using it were there way before it was even a thing, and so they're not as aware about all the moving parts of it. They may very well not have really paid that much attention to all the moving parts of it, and so now when it comes to taking a look at it, it's scary because it's new and it's different and it's stuff that's outside of their comfort zone and whatever else. But also because it's sprung up so quickly and it's changing so fast, it's something that is very hard to keep up with. And these individuals are in that situation where, yeah, it's running away from you. So what are you going to do? Oh, we want to clamp down on everything, and we want to attack parts of the media, parts of the interaction that this system allows. We want to attack that first. No, you need to go and sit down with the people. You need to get people aware of the effects of social media, the way that social media works, how it can interact with people, the effects it can have on people, including things like addiction to social media, the depression and anxiety that can come from it, all this stuff that we talked about last week in regards to dating apps as well. It's all part of the same thing, and it's all part of education and communication and discussion. It's got nothing to do with just trying to force people into the spotlight or take away the freedoms that they should have in free and democratic societies, as much as Jess Phillips doesn't seem to understand what that really means. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Anonymity online, is it something that you're maybe not so fond of the crappy people behind it? Like, I've been verbally had just shit spewed at me when I've been playing games with people before. And it's not nice to get. It's not nice to see. But guess what? At the end of doing whatever it is that I'm doing with that person, the end of that interaction, I can, if it's really bad, report them. If it's not so bad and it's just them being an arse, then I can block them. And it's all, again, these are in so many different places for you to take advantage of these tools. And I feel like these individuals who are making these complaints are probably individuals who just aren't aware of those tools and the extent to which that they can be used, and that's where the kind of problems come from. And they need to educate themselves before they start trying to impose themselves on the way that a system works, because again, all of these things are run by private companies. They shouldn't be holding that much power and that much information for people. But then on top of it, you've also got kind of the governments themselves. They can only push so far to regulate, push so far to force companies to do what they want. They're still private companies, and let's say that the UK decides to not just detach itself from the EU in the stupidest move made this side of the 2000s, but also they decide to move forward with a social media blackout because these companies just don't want to make the changes for the UK, and there's no real reason to because all the tools are still there, and so it becomes a kind of null and void conversation between government and these companies. And then they decide that no, then we just won't have social media. Well, guess what? That sets the UK back even further economically because we lose a main kind of very powerful source of communication, advertising, and discourse. So we'll have to see how all this pans out. I hope it won't amount to anything because it is so daft and so poorly informed. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, guys, especially considering that you guys are from all over the place as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this, because again, as far as I'm concerned, anonymity is a thing that people have a right to. Up until they do something so wrong that it breaks the law, so that then they have to be hunted down. They're allowed to be their own private person. They're allowed to do whatever they want, say whatever they want, act in whichever way they wish to, within specific confines. That doesn't mean that they're exempt of consequence, but what it does mean is that they still have their space, as it were. If someone says something behind closed doors in their own house by themselves, then we shouldn't have thought police crashing in through their window to take them on. And that, I feel like, the removal of things like online anonymity, where everything is transparent, is the beginning of, and not just everything is transparent and kind of tracked. I feel like that's the beginning of a Black Mirror episode. It's okay where you have to, or We Happy Few, the game, where you have to put on this happy, agreeable persona at all times, because otherwise, if you don't, then there are going to be people judging you, monitoring you, tagging in on what you're doing. And we've already seen stuff like this in regards to tracking and monitoring with the Snoopers Charter that came in over here, thanks to Theresa May, which in itself is something that infringes on things that I don't feel it should infringe on. But hey ho, guys, as said, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm kind of rambling now, so I'm going to cut it here. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video later. Take care.